Welcome back. Today I wanted to talk about the ego. How everybody tells us, hey, just drop your ego, and why they're all wrong. So we're going to talk about that and what is the truth of the ego, what's really going on, and how do we take a pause from that. So I've heard it so many times. Hey, just drop off your ego. And the thing about that, what they really mean is don't put yourself first, be conscientious, be kind, and don't be narcissistic, back off from yourself just a little bit. But to actually just drop your ego is entirely impossible. And you're going to find out why here. It's really kind of fascinating. Yoga tells us that only by the process of samadhi, of a continuous diving into samadhi, can we hope to reach a non-dual state. The way that I translate this is that we're actually merging. See, right now, you and I are identified with the left brain. We're very, very identified with it, mostly. Now, it doesn't mean we don't use our right brain. Obviously, we do. But we are largely and wholly identified with the left side of the brain. We're in the beta brainwave. So when information comes to us from the right side of the brain, it can very much feel like a second presence. And we will give that second presence different names. It might be Buddha, it might be Krishna, it might be Christ. As the information comes to us, now I'm not saying that the origin is necessarily the right side of the brain, but as the information comes to us from the right side of the brain, it is so polar from where we are identified, it will feel as a second presence. Now the whole of yoga is union, right? It's right there in the word. That word yoga is the same root as the root to yoke two oxen together. So you're bringing the two into one, into wholeness, into a profound and deep integration. There's a neuro-linguistic programming technique for integrating a part into the whole. And if you do that process, and I'm going to share that with you guys, but in another video. But if you do that process over and over again, it can help a lot to integrate all of your separate pieces in your neurology. And that process of continuously integrating can make you feel very, very wholesome, very much more whole and put together, coherent and not, divided within yourself so much. But still, that process is nothing compared to the deep and profound integration that we can experience in meditation. So that's the end of yoga, is to become integrated. That in a sense is the end of yoga, is to become integrated with the right side of the brain, to become whole again, one whole brain. They asked Gopi Krishna, what is the most important part of the brain? What is the part of the brain that is experiencing samadhi? He said, it's the whole. It's the whole thing. That integration, that profound integration, is a non-dual state. And right now, you and I are talking in a dual state. So the wall, the bed, the ceiling, the floor, they're all separate, right? We are not integrated in one. It's not perceived as one. We may understand that my body is made of atoms, and the floor is made of atoms, and the ceiling and the wall are made of atoms, but I don't actually experience it as one. That would be a non-dual state. So it isn't until that last integration that we actually become non-dual and slip away from the ego for however long we stay in that non-dual state. Before that, we're in the ego, 100%. There's no getting away from it. You can't just drop it off like a lost. Here's the thing. Your thalamus sends a signal from the front of the brain to the back of the brain. And this signal binds us, identifies us with the five senses. So that means there's a signal binding you to five senses, and it happens. It's produced by the thalamus, and it happens every 25 milliseconds. Every 25 milliseconds. So if you're a psychic and you receive a premonition or a flash of intuition, that flash has to take place between 25 milliseconds. And when things come to you in meditation, they're going to come in a flash, in between 25 milliseconds. Now, you may experience it in a much longer state because you continuously remember, or perhaps the intuition or the understanding is coming to you repeatedly between each section of the signal running through your thalamus. But that binding factor is necessary for life, because without it, we wouldn't be able to operate at all. We wouldn't be able to understand that this is a stove, and when you put your hand on the stove, it's going to burn you, because you would be so disassociated from yourself, you wouldn't understand that that's a bad thing. You might see your hand burning and think that's quite odd and interesting. And that's not the kind of response that we need for survival. So nature gives us this binding factor, as the scientists call it. But that binding to the five senses is the ego. That is the operation. And you can't hope to escape it except between every 25 milliseconds. And that's why intuition comes to us in a flash. And that's why we have to be so in the moment and so aware of the moment, and lower the breath rate and put a natural brake on the heart through the operation of the dorsal vagal nerve. All these things happen so that we become more quiet and more aware and can notice that still small voice that operates between 25 milliseconds. Isn't that fascinating? So we should definitely be nice. We should definitely be kind. We should definitely not be narcissistic. We should be compassionate as we can, practice compassion in our lives. But in terms of actually dumping your ego, I've seen people become very frustrated with that. And I've seen them do things in their life to try and accomplish that in a negative kind of way. So I just want to let everybody know it's not actually possible until that last integration with the right side of the brain. In that moment, in that very deep samadhi, that's when we have a chance to see the other side without an ego. That's an extremely positive state. It's an extremely blissful state, an extremely restful state. So I hope that clears things up. I think it's fascinating. I love the brain. I love meditation. And I love sharing this stuff with you guys. Thanks so much for sticking around. And if you like this video, you're gonna like this one too. And if you like that one, oh, check out this one. Thanks, guys.